Cain Country begins in 1 minute.
One, the devil went down to Georgia. Lukenbach, Texas. 100 years. What's your relationship as an artist with your biggest hit? A conversation with Five for Fighting, John Ondrasik. 2, the rarest resource in Venezuela, around Venezuela. The rarest resource in this story is not gold, is not oil. The rarest resource is honesty coming out of Venezuela. 3, you, the militia, on helmet hair and more. It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel, the Will Cain Facebook page, always available by following us on Apple or on Spotify. Jump into the comment section and you can be a member of the militia, as is Chris DV, who told me just yesterday, Will, I love your show, but your hair looks like a plastic helmet today. Well, thank you for that, Chris. You weren't the only person to comment on my hair yesterday. And the militia has a lot of things to say about, I guess, what is a grown-out version, a little bit longer. My boy said a little bit of lettuce in the back. But I do not, as I have been accused of, having dyed Chinese black hair on a middle-aged white man. A little bit more of that coming up later here on the Will Cain Country Show. But also, revisiting Venezuela. A lot of talk about America First initiatives, including taking the world's biggest oil supply, running Venezuela, digging the record amounts of gold out of the ground in Venezuela, pushing out Chinese influence. But the rarest of outcomes and the rarest of resources seems to be right now the explanation from President Donald Trump. He's not wrapping up anything about what we're doing in Venezuela in the Hallmark greeting card sales package of exporting democracy. He's telling the truth about conquest. He's telling the truth about interest. He's telling the truth about why this is America First and how it serves Americans. And that honesty might just be the rarest of resources. That's all coming up here today on Will Cain Country. But we have a treat to begin because we have a platinum selling artist. Today we're going to be hanging out with Five for Fighting. Story number 1. John Ondrasik is Five for Fighting. He is a platinum-selling artist multiple times over. Grammy nominated. You know him from, at the very least, Superman and 100 Years, and he joins us now on Will Cain Country. What's up, John?
Will, great to be with you. Big fan. Before we start, let me express my sincere condolences on your Cowboys. I actually attended the Cowboys-Chargers game, which was quite enjoyable. So, but all said, Happy New Year, my friend.
Thank you. What a insincere, wonderful way to start our relationship, John. I got a text yesterday from an executive at Fox who was saying thank you for a Christmas gift, and he ended his text with "Go Pats." And I said, well, I'm really happy for you because I have no sports left, not Longhorns, not Cowboys, not Mavericks, to distract me from fraud or murder trials like Brian Koberger or Venezuela. So I'm all in, public. Don't worry. I won't be distracted by any bread and circus. I won't be distracted by the Dallas Cowboys. Hey, John, I'd love to start with a question that I've asked a couple of artists because I'm just kind of fascinated by this concept, okay? And it started with, I was at a concert in L.A. When I was a younger man at Pepperdine, still trying to live vicariously through my home state of Texas. And I went to Waylon Jennings at the House of Blues. And the crowd, John, was chanting for him to sing Lukenbach, Texas. And Waylon took a step back from the microphone and went over to his bar stool where he had not yet given up drinking and grabbed his glass of bourbon, took a sip, and walked back up to the microphone and said, I'm going to tell y'all a secret. I hate that effing song. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by this idea of an artist's relationship to his hit. And I once had the opportunity to sit down with Charlie Daniels before he passed, the great Charlie Daniels. And I asked him, how did he feel about Devil Went Down to Georgia? And he was much more appreciative of his hit, you know, in fact, described it as mailbox money. You know, he said, I love that song every time I go to the mailbox. So I'm just, whether or not it's 100 Years, which is an anthem for many people, a song that makes people cry, or Superman, I'm just kind of curious how you feel about those biggest hits. And I should say that I've already read you have described Superman as your firstborn. So I can anticipate your answer is going to be a lot to do with how I feel about my firstborn son.
Well, again, I think I agree with Charlie. I think any aspiring songwriter, their dream is to have songs that people sing back to them, and to have a couple that have become kind of part of the American songbook. I'm just incredibly grateful. But I'm also equally pleased that I still enjoy singing the songs, you know, whether it's the 10,000th time or not. There are other songs in my catalog. If I never sang again, I'd be perfectly fine. But certainly Superman, having so many different contexts. Of course, 9/11, the song for the heroes of 9/11. Every time I go somewhere, there's a story, and it's inspiring to me. The song was a gift, Will. I wrote it in 45 minutes. You know, it was kind of came, you know, from a higher power. 100 Years also, because I'm always in there somewhere. You know, when I wrote the song, I was in the first half of the second verse, 33, Family on My Mind. Now I'm in the bridge. And again, I think so many people kind of find themselves in that song somewhere. So I'm always living that song. And certainly I'm a different person now than I was then. So I love singing both those songs. And frankly, I have a little kind of scorn for artists who are blessed to have a hit. And some of them won't even play it in their shows, which I think is so offensive. But I'm just incredibly grateful to still be doing this and to have those two songs that matter to folks.
What do you think motivates that artist that doesn't want to play the hit? Is it just selfishness? I'm tired of that song. I've played it too many times, as opposed to how you feel. And by the way, John, I can appreciate and understand at a much lower level. Don't think I'm trying to put myself on the same position of you. But whenever I'm out and somebody approaches me, sometimes my friends will go, does that ever get old? I'm like, never. Yeah. It never gets old. And it's not about my ego. It's not like, ooh, I got a little boost of what it feels like to feel famous. No, I'm not doing this thing to sound away. It's genuinely how I feel. I feel so appreciative when people come up to me. It's like, wow, you give me time out of your day. That's really, really gracious, and I'm appreciative. So I wonder sort of the mindset of the artist that goes, I'm not playing that song.
Well, I think part of it is, you know, artists like to believe and they have more than their hit. You know, there's 13 songs on an album. You know, folks watching, if you don't know what a record is, ask your grandparents. But again, I think, you know, we like to think there's more to us than our hits, right? So I think a lot of artists, you know, will come out and people will start screaming from the first moment, 100 Years, Superman, you know, and you're like, I have other songs. But the reason people can hear those other songs are because of your hit, you know? So again, I think it's, and also I was fortunate that, you know, I had success very late in life relatively for musicians. You know, I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I had hits. You know, when you're 18 and you're, you know, you're the top of the world, you know, it's like the Elvis thing, right? Your maturity stops when you have a hit. So I have a deep gratitude just for the fact that I have this career. So again, and I think most people, you know, love playing their hits. I know Charlie loved playing his hit. You know, I actually was at a few shows with him, and I was jumping up and down just like everybody else, and that energy fills you up, and part of a job as a professional. I mean, and you know this too. You got to do 2 shows every day. You got to find a reason to be excited about what you're doing. You look out in the audience and you see somebody singing the song. Maybe they're crying, maybe they're like standing up. So you take energy from the crowd as well.
Man, I think something you said there is so key. And I don't want to do an audience for a small number of people here, but I think everybody is fascinated by sort of the way celebrities handle fame. And something you said is so key, that you had your first hit, what you described as later in life. But for both of us, it still sounds early now in retrospect,
Yeah.
28, 30. But you had received a level of maturity, and I think therefore the ability to handle and put into perspective what was changing your life, where whether or not it's an athlete or somebody that shoots out of the gates famous, I'm not absolving them of their behavior, the way they view the world, but you can understand how they lose all perspective when you get famous so young.
Yeah, Landon Donovan actually said something to me that really stuck with me. He said, we were talking about this exact thing because, every time we do a show, we may not be at our top best. We may be tired, we may be sick, we may have problems at home. And he said to me, I've been playing a soccer game every day, every week since I was 5 years old. And there's many days I don't want to go out and do this. And he said, but at every game, there's one person in that crowd, at least, who came to see me, and it's the only time they'll see me in their lifetime. And I owe it to them to do my best, to give my best. And I feel that same way as an artist. Every show I do, there's one person there, it'll be the only time they ever see me. And if I'm blessed to have this life, the least I can do is give them my best. Is it perfect all the time? No. Are there issues sometimes? But I think, and again, struggling, I'm a 15-year overnight success, buddy. So, struggling for those many years also gives you a certain humility and gratitude.
Yes. Let's go back to Superman. You said you wrote it in 45 minutes. You did describe it as sort of divine intervention. How does it normally go? What went differently with Superman?
Well, songs can take days, months, years. 100 years took, 3 months to write once I had the basic concept. It's very rare that you get a song that complete that quickly. Of course, it sounds very cool, but talk about the thousands of songs you wrote before that, right? Most of them terrible. They're kind of the path to that 45 minutes. I wrote a song called The Riddle that was a very popular song that took almost a year. So most of songwriting is drudgery, misery, failure, going back to the drawing board. But when you have the work ethic, and a lot of it's work ethic, I'm not Elton John. I can't come down and have a lyric on my piano and write Rocket Man every day. Some people are just prodigies. For most of us, like anything, it's work ethic, it's dedication, it's failure, it's coming back, it's getting up, and writing thousands of songs. And if you're blessed, you get a couple that people know. So again, but yeah. And when I first wrote Superman, I didn't think it was for me. I'm like, oh yeah, it's nice. I'm a rocker. I listen to Zeppelin, The Who. But my producer kept saying, man, you gotta cut that little song. And I'm like, nah, I'll give it to James Taylor or something. And he said, cut that little. We called it A Little Song. And when it first came out, nobody wanted to play it. It was the 90s, 2000s, Lilith Fair, boy bands, grunge music. It wasn't the 70s. And it was just one of those fluky things that kind of caught on. And because it was different, really became an iconic song.
And you said I'm a rocker, and I did read this, John. So the original career, which by the way did include a band named John Scott, was sort of in that mold. It was, as I think you've described, as a bit Bon Jovi, and I think you described the problem with that band. What blew it up was almost overnight. It was Nirvana.
Well, it was hilarious. I was just out of college, and I met Rudy Sarzo, who was a bass player from Whitesnake and Ozzy and Quiet Riot, and his buddy was Scott Sheets, who was Pat Benatar's former guitar player. So we formed this band. I was 22. They were all in their 40s, and it was all Pat Benatar's ex-players. And we were having some success. We were writing some songs, and as you said, then one day this little band called Nirvana came out, and that whole hair band era was over literally in hours. And for me, again, I was fortunate. I went back to the piano. I started writing my Elton Billy songs, and that's really kind of where my, I think, skill set and heart is. But it was a lot of fun. Those guys are still my buddies. It's fun to kind of rock out. They had great stories. I was like the almost famous kid. They would take me to big rock shows and said, "All right, you can go in that room, but don't go in that room." So it was a great experience. I learned a lot, and they were great mentors. Rudy today is still a great mentor for me.
So, when you talk about something changing overnight and Nirvana arriving on the scene, I think what you're alluding to, or what we should fill in the blanks there, is all of a sudden the business changes and the appetite for sales, and not just sales, because that's downstream, the appetite for producing, for buying something that's not grunge goes away. So that kind of leads me to my curiosity on this. So, you've gravitated over time, but I don't want to rob you of the message of the entirety of your career, because I don't think you are not doing soulless music. Your music has a message, but over time, your message has evolved to be more embraced or more overt. I don't necessarily want to say political, but you have become more open as well about, what you have to say. I'm just curious about, back to the business side of that, how that works. Like, is that something that the recording industry, and of course they're not as important as they used to be, but is that something the recording industry says, nah, no interest in message music, John?
Well, I think throughout my career, you can kind of see my worldview. I've never been, at least for the last few years, kind of quite as out with some of my messaging, but that was circumstances, kind of determined that. But of course, I wrote a lot about freedom. I wrote about our troops, which has kind of been the passion for my life. I wrote about America. And I think people were fine with that because, it was, I think, songs that most folks get around. And I don't think it was really directed at anybody, but kind of a love for our troops in America. But then in the last few years, as you know, I've written some songs that have a little more direct messages. To me, they're not political songs, they're moral songs. But of course, in this day and age, everything's political. And yes, if I had a record company like I did Columbia Records, 15, 20 years ago, there would have been big problems with some of the things I've been writing. But again, I think that the songwriter's role is to express themselves. Not everybody's going to agree, and I don't expect them to. But we've seen that in musical history for the last, 70, 80 years. You listen to the music of the 60s, you get a sense of the times. And I'm doing nothing different than the folks did back then.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, back then they called it protest music, which that meant largely it had one point of view, whether or not it was political or a message. It had one sort of overriding point of view, which was anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian, to some extent at the time, anti-government. So do you feel like the message to you, again, if it was Colombia, because you've written a song about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, you've done stuff about Ukraine, you've done stuff about Israel. Do you feel like the response, and we're projecting a little bit, but you've been in the business for a long time, is it, hey, John, we don't think that will find commercial success, or hey, John, we're not on board with your message?
Mostly the latter. I have to, to be honest with you, I think it's funny how you talked about the songs being protest songs to the man back in the day. Now, unfortunately, the media and the industry is the man. If you are writing songs that don't go with their worldview, you become an outcast. You become a pariah. As you said, in the last few years, I've written songs about kind of world issues, and there's many different kinds of censorship. When I wrote Blood on My Hands about the American withdrawal, everybody said, you cannot put that out. You cannot, it will end your career. And my thought was, well, that our Afghan veterans need a voice. They're gutted by the fact that we abandoned their allies. And I thought to myself, if John McCain could stay in a Vietnam prison for a few days and let the guy before him come out, I can release a stupid song. And that song came out and became a voice for our veterans. Now, to be honest with you, would I have done that 30 years ago? I don't know. I would hope I would. But certainly there's passive censorship, there's direct censorship. We can talk much more about that. But, YouTube ended up taking down the song because it was critical of the administration. So I think I've lived this kind of passive and proactive. When we send it out to music publicists and periodicals, usually we get a lot of press. We sent the song to 400 music press outlets. How many do you think covered it?
I'm assuming zero.
One. The Voice of America. So so again, that's what you have to deal with. And again, to me, it's if a Republican president had abandoned our allies in Afghanistan, plunged that country into the dark ages, the song would remain the same, only the names would have changed. But of course, in this day and age, everything's political and everybody has an agenda.
Is that what you just described for me? Is that passive censorship? You said we could talk more about this. Is that your experience with passive censorship? What about what you said, direct censorship?
Well, I think direct censorship is doing what YouTube did. They, people saw that the song was damaging the Biden administration. It was becoming very popular. The video was becoming, viral. Press was picking up on it, conservative press. So YouTube took it down. And of course, when I asked why, they said, well, there's graphic images. And of course, within an hour, I put up 15 more videos that had more graphic images. And to be honest with you, without some of our friends, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, folks, kind of that share a worldview, I would have been crushed like every other conservative story. But because we had basically proof what they were doing, it became an international story. And as my old buddy Andrew Breitbart liked to do, that's how you actually get traction. And all of a sudden it's being covered from around the world, not because of the song, but because YouTube took it down. So that's proactive censorship. The media, the music media not covering it's proactive censorship. Of course, if there was a Republican president and I wrote that song, I probably would have got a Grammy or a nomination. More passive censorship, I would have to say, is the song I wrote for Israel. I wrote a song called Okay, We're Not Okay, basically supporting Israel, calling out the atrocities of Hamas. Now that song became a voice for the Jewish people. But frankly, in the music industry, I've never seen a greater disgrace in my life, their silence after October 7th. It's been disgusting. It's been shameful. There's a lot of reasons for it. But the passive kind of censorship is people are afraid to write a song in support of Israel. People are afraid to say, I support Israel. Many Jewish artists are quiet after October 7th, which again shows how broken this industry is. And so the passive, and I get so many calls and comments from people in the industry saying, oh, thank you for writing that. Thank you. I can't promote it because I might lose my job, but thank you for writing that. So that's more of a passive censorship where people are just afraid to say what they believe because they are in fear of their livelihoods.
Wait, let's explore that just a bit more because, look, this is interesting on two levels. It's not just Jewish artists; it's Jewish record label executives. I would assume. Which there's a segment in. How about this? There's a segment of people out there, quite honestly, say Jews run everything, including the record industry, right?
Yeah.
There's a segment of people that would believe that the record industry is overwhelmingly liberal because, of course, it is, and therefore they're aligning with, I guess, left-wing causes, which somehow, some way is the right-wing Palestinians.
Right.
But so what is the reason that you would have such, as you described it, silence then with all that in the background inside the recording industry?
Well, here's a very cynical answer, and I asked a very prominent music reporter that exact question. I said, Jewish executives are running these companies, and they're silent, and there's no consequences for artists basically coming out saying kill the Jews. I go, how can that be? And she said, well, there's 15 million Jews and 1 billion Muslims that consume records, and that just made me sick. And I talked to artists. Look, I was honored to play the concert for New York.
Hold on, John. That was the answer from a music reporter?
Yes, who talks to these people every day. Now, was she a little cynical? Maybe. But look, I think there is that calculation. They don't want to offend their artists, many of them have swallowed the woke, oppressor virus. But it's disgusting. And I'll have to say, I talked to certain artists. What I was going to say about the concert for New York is all those artists that came on that stage, all those icons, they're of our generation, right? They have not been indoctrinated by the woke virus. They have not been kind of crushed by this kind of media barrage to our kids. They know better, but they are silent after October 7th. Bono said a couple words, but that was it. And so, to me, I think a lot of this is moral cowardice. And I asked them, why can't you say anything? Why can't you just say Hamas is bad? How can, and they said, well, I'm afraid for, my family. I get it. I get death threats. I have to have extra security. They say, well, I don't want my concerts protested. I go, I get it. And I said, you know what else? That's exactly what people said in 1938. That's exactly what artists did in 1938. And look where that led. So again, Will, I have no good answer for you for this. I think it's the woke mind virus. It's moral cowardice. It's groupthink, and it's a shame because the music, the arts, are what are supposed to give light to human rights issues. We are Live Aid. We are Sun City. We are the Concert for New York. And now we're the party, the concert, the industry of Hamas, Venezuela, the Taliban. It's gross.
You mentioned in the course of those answers to me, you used a royal plural. You said we. I think you were referencing that you and I probably share a lot of the same worldview. You talked about our friends, Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. So you're describing yourself in some ways, at least. I'm so hesitant, John, to use these types of brands and labels and words, but to some extent, conservative. And I'm just curious, in that industry, then, therefore, how, why, always in your life? Like, what is this? How is this the development of your life?
Again, I've never been someone who stands on my soapbox and lectures people. I find that kind of annoying from celebrities. But no, I was raised by a middle-class family. We had a family business. I still work at our family business. I've worked through it my whole career. We manufacture shopping carts. We actually just opened a facility in Dallas near you. So I've lived in the world where you have to make a payroll, where people work hard, where I see the American dream every day. I was a huge fan of Reagan. He sat behind me at a Kings game once. So I think my whole philosophy is kind of Reagan oriented, but I would certainly look at myself as a moderate. I was kind of socially liberal and financially conservative, like so many folks are and were. And I think the left has just gone so far to, wacko, that I may seem a little more right-wing than I am. Look, I wrote a song called Can One Man Save the World about Ukraine, basically, talking about the heroism of Zelensky and Putin. And I've gotten a lot of heat from the right for that, so some people love this song, then they hate that song, then they love that song. The Good Morning America debuted Can One Man Save the World, right? The media embraced that song, but to me, there's moral messages. Look,
I bet they did.
Yeah, they did.
That song was embraced by Good Morning America. Did they play your song? Did they play "Okay" about Israel?
Of course not. But you know what? Fox News embraced Can One Man Save the World. They played the whole thing. I was on Fox and Friends. I was sitting there, and Brian Kilmeade was crying. It's like these heroic Ukrainians fighting the behemoth that is Putin. So to me, does that mean that we're doing everything right in Ukraine, that we should write a blank check? I was there. I was there with Republican congressmen. I went there. I saw empty, thousands of empty trucks. What are in those trucks? Does that mean we have to write a blank check to Ukraine? Of course not. But Putin's the bad guy. Putin's the bad guy. The Hamas is the bad guy. The Taliban's the bad guy. Maduro's a bad guy. And to me, it's nothing more than that. And I'll write songs about bad guys, and some people will love them, some people won't. But this is called America, and that's what makes us great.
So can I assume there's a song coming out about Venezuela?
I don't want to write that song. I think it's going to be called Marco Rubio's 17th Job,
Hey, while we're on the subject of bio, it's not just your world and your politics that might set you apart from the music industry. Also, your college major and your degree have to set you apart from the music industry. I just saw this UCLA. It is applied science and mathematics.
Well, I'm talking to a Pepperdine lawyer here. So, look, my dad was an astrophysicist. My dad was an astrophysicist, worked at JPL. I had an amazing upbringing, kind of, watching, from our couch, the American kind of space race, and always been kind of had the aptitude for it. And to be honest with you, I was, pursuing music at a very young age, and I needed a fallback, and I was good at math. And I said, well, if I can get a math degree and this whole thing blows up, I can get a job. And it was kind of that was my mindset. I was writing songs in my dorm every day, and most of those brain cells are long gone. But yeah, my mom's the musician. She was a piano player, USC grad, and my dad was the engineer. So I think I got both genes.
Do you think those brain cells are long gone? Because I've always heard that music is mathematical, that there's a lot of overlap between math and music.
Of course, you look back in history, Galileo, Einstein, all, musicians, and certainly there is, particularly in, the classical music. I had a choice in my early 20s. Most singers, rock singers, train operatically. Many people don't know that, but I was, training with one of the leading, voice teachers in LA, and you would see Axl Rose come through, you would see Jack White, you would see Don Dokken, all these guys. So I was singing opera, and I had a chance to do that. But for me, I was a rock and roller at heart. But certainly, there's a connection to music, and especially high level math, because it's all creative, right? It's all creativity. It's all thinking beyond the box. So yeah, no, you're exactly right, and I think that part of the brain certainly is important in my music as well.
Let's talk for a minute, John, just following my own curiosity about the business. Because we talked a lot about record companies and the influence they can have on what is released, but that's obviously changed over time because you can go direct to the consumer. You can put out your own music, you can stream directly. But I've never fully understood the mathematics anymore. Like, what is the mathematics of being a successful? And when I say successful, we'll put this in financial terms. Success in life is not defined by financial terms, but you like to be able to make a living at what you do. Yeah. And if you're into music, streaming, live, you've licensed a ton of your music to television. I think 350 music and movies and series. So, like, what's the pie chart look like now in music?
It's certainly different. When I first, I kind of caught the last wave of the music business. When Superman came out, 2001, it was the record industry sold their most records. Of course, here comes Napster, and the whole thing literally collapsed in a year. So back then, certainly record sales were part of that. Publishing was a huge part of that. Licensing was a huge part of that. Radio play. But of course, most of that has disappeared. Certainly, you could take a zero off the licenses now because there's so many people that are competing for those slots. Record sales, of course, have dwindled to virtually nothing because people buy singles. A record would sell, the record company would make $5 on a record sale. For a single, they'd make 30 cents. So that just explains the collapse of the industry. But as you said, these days, I think it's never been easier to be heard. Back in the day, if you didn't have a label, nobody would hear you. But, a lot of these artists basically start on YouTube. They can make a living on YouTube. They don't need a label. But to answer your question, a lot of income now is touring, particularly if you do not write your own songs. If you do not write your own songs, it's touring, other branding. That's where you make your money. But it's come back. Certainly the streaming has caught up a little bit. If you have billions of streams, you'll make some money. But yeah, the days of tour support, record companies giving you 3 records to have a hit like Springsteen, those are long over. But also, I think, you can make a record on your laptop for, $2,000 that used to cost you $200,000. You can make a video, for $1,000 that's better than any video MTV showed, for the first 20 years. So I think there's, like anything with technology and culture, there's positives and negatives. And my daughter's an aspiring songwriter, and I'm watching her go through. But at the end of the day, it's still about a good song. And AI has still not written a great song that I've heard. And AI is never going to sell out Madison Square Garden.
No, I can't see AI selling out Madison Square Garden. I do wonder if AI is going to be able to write a song. And we could get into a philosophical discussion about the spark of creativity and what is humanity. One more question on the business, because look, John, one of my favorite artists of all time is George Strait. He always has been. I love George Strait. But George Strait also notoriously does not write his own songs. He buys songs.
Yeah.
And it just, when you said that, it got me thinking, like, I wonder if the economics has collapsed for George Strait because of that. Now, he streams a ton of music, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much that's going to him versus the songwriter and how that's split up. But he is back on the road a little bit. And he's rich beyond all, I'm sure,
Right.
unless he's spent like a drunken sailor. I don't think he has to worry. But I wonder, an artist like George Strait, if that forces them back on the road in the modern economics.
It totally does. It totally does. As you know, and the vast majority of my my earnings in my career have been publishing relating because I own the copyrights for my songs. Elvis never wrote a song. It's like song. Now there are some artists, and I find it disgusting, that will only.
So by the way, on that, John, does that mean in your mind that the Elvis estate is probably bringing in a lot less than it was in the previous 30 years because he didn't write those songs? He doesn't own the rights to those songs, and it required, album sales when he was alive, touring, and none of those exist anymore. So the Elvis estate is probably bringing in a lot less than it did because of streaming.
Well, the Elvis estate is unique because the brand of Elvis, I know this because we were creating a TV show around the Memphis Mafia. The brand of Elvis is more alive than ever. So there's so many other income streams. But for typical artists, yes, like Destiny's Child, boy bands, they don't write their own songs typically. So their only income is record sales, which is very rare because you rarely recoup. I just recouped 20 years later my record company debt. So that usually never happens. So basically, your only income is touring. And so yes, I have many rock star friends, who've played arenas their whole lives, who are playing, the club around the corner because they don't own the copyrights. And again, so, it's just the reality. It's always the writer, right? Write your own content, whether it's, a script writer, a songwriter. And so again, to me, and I think, I think that's the way it should be. The songs are what last a million, years, hopefully, and thousands of artists can sing your songs. But fortunately for me, I wrote my own songs and still do that, and they do pay the bills.
One last question, John, to bring this full circle, talking about the message and all of that. The audience has probably heard me bring this up more than once. There's this famous commencement address by the author David Foster Wallace that I like a lot, and I've made my sons listen to it. And he talks about the concept of worship, and he's like, basically he makes the argument that worship is attention, and it's what you place at the top of your totem pole when it comes to priorities. And so if you worship money, you'll never have enough. If you worship your intellect, you'll find yourself in every room feeling like a fraud. If you worship your looks, you'll die 1,000 deaths because you get old. And on and on. And he said, and for my money, like among the things out there to worship, God is one of the best. But when he talks about this, you think about what the word worship means. And it does have a lot to do with attention. And I think about that when it comes to music. I think about it myself because, look, I don't always listen to. In fact, I very rarely listen to music with an uplifting, positive message. I'm a huge country music fan, and let's be real about the message in country music. Yeah. It's a lot of whiskey. It's a lot of depression, and I think about kids listening to hip hop, and I'm not trying to be the old man, but the message inside of it is pretty degenerate. And you think about the effect of the devoted attention and therefore the worship to that message. And it makes you a little worried about like with anything else, are you eating junk food? Are you watching junk food? Are you listening to junk food? And I wonder what you think about sort of popular culture and its message.
Well, it's not just music. I think it's all kind of art or influence. If you look on TikTok, one reason we have this terrible problem with the youth, you look at the polls, more younger people support Hamas in Israel is because of the influence and the music that people are hearing. That's all they know. That's all they hear. These artists are radical anti-Semites, and it affects the culture. And to be honest with you, I think our side has never understood the power of the culture the power of the arts over the culture. In my mind, one song is worth 1,000 speeches. I've lived it. I've seen it. And if we ignore that, we're going to lose. And we are losing in many respects. So I agree with you. At the same time, I listen to those songs too. And the songs are escapes. And maybe it's a way for us to kind of deal with our challenges. And that's what music is. I don't think music necessarily has to be uplifting and happy. I think it has to be authentic. And people can find what they need. The nice thing about a song, I remember when Superman came out, I'd get a lot of letters from our troops overseas, and they would talk about how the song mattered to them. But it was so many different ways. Some said, well, I use it to escape. I use it to focus. I use it to prepare for the mission. I use it to wind down. The great thing about music that is unique, we take the song and apply it to our lives in a way that matters to us. Music is the only thing that does that. And you may listen to a sad song and listen, have a memory that goes along with it, and maybe it cheers you up, maybe it makes you. That's the great thing about music. So I think as long as it's authentic, it's important. But of course, as a father, I realize that I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan of her music. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan of the human being, because tens of millions of little girls grew up with her, and you know what? She was a pretty good role model. And there's not a lot of great role models. So I like to celebrate the ones that are kind of understanding that they have an obligation to our kids. Many of them don't.
All right, before we go, John, I don't know if it's true, but this is what my producers tell me, that you're willing and interested in playing a little bit of something for us, 30 seconds of something that you've either worked on or you've got here. And if you are, man, we'd love it.
Well, thank you, Will. And as I leave you, I got to say thank you again. Was a big fan of yours at ESPN and love what you're doing over there. Let me back up here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Actually, I wrote this song with Luca. He came over the other day. He loves L.A.
Come on.
Yeah. He came over, and we were talking. I told him I was coming on your show, and so we wrote this little song together for you. Yeah. So
okay.
I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find the better part of me. I'm more than a bird, more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. It's not easy to be the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, I'm glad that Luca is living his life in L.A. and happy with you. That's the biggest lie I've told today. I'm not happy. I'm very disappointed about everything, including the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm not disappointed in this interview. This has been awesome. Thank you for spending so much time with us, John. This is I've loved it. I loved every minute of it. Thank you, man.
Well, thank you for fighting the good fight every day, buddy. Happy New Year.
All right. Happy New Year to you, John Ondrasik. 5 for Fighting. Check him out. Of course, you already have, but make sure you keep those streams going, but also go see him live in concert. He's written his stuff, so he's good to go as well. In fact, I got a lot of comments here that have come in, and I want to go through them. Here's a little taste that Dan has already sent in 2-a-days from Florida. Petty Gal says, please tell me Will Cain is going to do the SEAL Challenge this year. I'm so ready for shirtless Will, so he better knock off the holiday food. Oh, there's been a big setback on the Will Cain New Year, New Me 2026. In fact, I'm going to fill you in on that setback when we come back on Will Cain Country.
You never know who might be taking the quiz.
Hi, everyone. It's Candace Cameron Bure.
Hey, everyone. It's Phil Sims.
It's Dolores Catania.
Hey, everyone. I'm Kix Brooks.
It's Candace Bushnell.
I'm Rob Paulson.
I'm Ryan Serhant.
Hey, everyone. I'm Nicole Palizzi.
Everybody's Kevin Nealon.
What's up, guys? It's Nia Sue, and it's time to take the quiz.
5 questions in less than 5 minutes every day. Listen and follow at thequiz.fox.
Every weekday, it's your go-to source for staying informed and entertained. The Fox News Primetime Highlights Podcast, offering a curated selection of the most impactful moments of the Ingram Angle, Jesse Waters Primetime, Hannity, and Gutfeld. Listen and follow now so you never miss a moment of the action-packed highlights from these must-watch Fox News Channel shows. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. America's listening to Fox News. Every hour of every day, Fox News Radio is there with the latest breaking news and information you rely on.
This is a Fox News Alert.
I'm Lisa Brady.
I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News.
With Fox News correspondents around the globe.
At the White House, Simon Owen in London.
On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The news that matters most to you. The top headlines, all in one place. Listen and follow the Fox News Hourly Update at foxnewspodcasts.com or ask your smart speaker to play Fox News.
One thing I love, no matter how this turns out, no matter what happens, no matter whether or not we get the gold, whether or not we get the oil, whether or not we kick out China, one thing we've already got is honesty when it comes to Venezuela. It is Will Cain Country, streaming live at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel and the Will Cain Facebook page. Follow us on Spotify or on Apple. Jump into the comments section. Poll question up. 2 Days Dan put it up. It is, do you want politics out of music? Do you want a message inside your music? And this is some of what you had to say out there. Shoshana McClue says on YouTube, we need truth, experience, and emotions in our music. We love stories. How can politics be avoided? Boundaries are essential. Timothy Henry says, why can't people have common sense and stop being offended by everything? But now Freedom Q9L says, I don't want to hear their politics coming from a rant. I don't care about politically motivated good songs. I think that's interesting, 2 days. I think that's interesting, Tinfoil.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to give you an example. I always have liked Green Day, the music. Now, Green Day, the rant, I don't love. I don't want to hear their opinion in a magazine article, quite honestly, and I'm sorry to rob them of that, but I'm uninterested. But, like, you know what I like? I like American Idiot. Yeah. It's a good song. You know, and it's basically calling me an American idiot, you know, but I'm not offended when I listen to it. And so that music it's true. Like, I don't care about the politics inside the music. It's more the expert, you know, at the podium that
like
I
Taylor
find.
Swift on Trump.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if I feel the same way about video content, because I think I hold it against a series or a movie more when it's baked into the content. Isn't that interesting?
You do.
I think that I forgive the music, and I hold it against the television or movie.
Well, that's because, like CCR, for example, they have Fortunate Son. And it's almost become like this. I mean, it is a protest song, but people don't look at it like a protest song anymore. They look at it differently because, like, when you're watching a TV show, you can see what's more egregious. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, music, you just kind of like embrace it and take it in. It's like, kind of like washes over you.
It's like what John said about you can make a song whatever you want it to be for yourself. So you could use it to motivate you or make you sad. You know, so it can change that way.
Well, I think there's also an overtness that is key. So I've started rewatching Game of Thrones with my sons. Wow. And, you know, Game of Thrones is a political show. I don't know that it has that much to say about modern politics, but it is a political show. And it is really well done, you know, whereas some of these, and not to just go ahead and put like these, George Clooney, who I think is a great actor, but sometimes when he does the political-based movies, it's just so on the nose, you know, that you're like, I don't need 2 hours of this message coming from that.
Well, the new Leo movie.
It's like the music.
Like you said.
The new Leo movie.
Yeah. Like you said, people said it was woke, but I didn't see that. I could see why they said that, but it
because you thought. Tammy Nichols, 8935 says on YouTube, I think there is nothing wrong with political music. It's freedom of speech. Look at Toby Keith just like Lee Greenwood. And that's something we all have to be honest about, right? I like the ones I like. I don't like the ones I don't like. So it's not really whether or not there's politics in the music. We're passing judgment on what the politics are in the music. Because everybody, I mean, we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. Come on. I love that from Toby Keith.
Yeah.
You know?
I've listened to
Samantha
a lot of
Garcia
punk,
over
though.
on Facebook says.
And like punk
and that's
is like
pretty...
has changed.
Yeah,
you know,
punk
like
is
it's too on the nose. Whereas like before it was a little better the way they like
English punk, like against the monarchy. You know.
Sure. It's just like it just feels like I don't know. I'm just a little tired of like the Orange Man. I don't know, just the common Democrat talking points. Whereas before it was a little more creative to me. I don't know.
What is punk? Is that Sex Pistols? Is that Ramones?
Yep.
What is punk? Is that
those are tight?
Is that
yeah.
Butthole Surfers?
Yeah.
Butthole.
What is
Bad
punk?
Brains.
Yeah. Then you have skate punk, which is
Then you have pop punk that came along, which is way different.
Yeah. That's less political.
That like Green Day started off as punk and then they became pop punk. Blink-182, pop punk.
Right.
It's different. You know, it's not.
Right. I like that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, pop punk is good.
Yeah.
Or I call it skate punk because like pop punk is also considered like newfound glory a little bit.
Sure.
A little emo. So I don't like those much.
I'm way outside my comfortable zone right now talking about punk. Samantha Garcia on Facebook says, honestly, I really appreciate conversations like this because free speech and different opinions actually matter a lot. And it's nice to see people discussing it openly with respect. It makes you think about how important it is to listen to each other instead of canceling every time we disagree. I totally agree, Samantha. Meanwhile, I don't really understand what's going on here, but Original Names 9571 says, I'm nominating Will to play Woody in the inevitable live-action adaptation of Toy Story. So why am I all of a sudden being cast in Toy Story?
Well, so there's been talk online. There's been talk online that they're doing a live-action Toy Story movie. So they're saying who would play Buzz Lightyear and Woody, you know, the old characters. So we put together a little graphic what it would look like. I think you'd pull it off pretty well there. You know, I think there's Woody.
I'm too old for Woody.
There's Will Cain in the hat. I think you could pull it off. I see it. The hair, the face shape. It works out.
Woody's really old. He's from like the 50s.
Yeah, Woody's old.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. You got the accent already. The outfit probably.
I'm just going to sit here for a while and marinate in that I have the same face shape as Woody. Like you said that. Like that was such a side swipe that I couldn't move on from. I'm like, how do I have Woody's face shape?
Yeah, bone
the
structure.
Ratio
Good bone
of
structure.
Look at the ratio of width to height of his head, and that's what I've got going on. Like,
no, he got cheekbones.
He's 3 times as long as he is wide. Is that what my face and head look like?
Yeah, I'll take that back. You're right. Sorry.
Maybe lately.
Person.
Maybe lately, because this is what I've got going on with the hair. I told you earlier that Chris DV says I look like I'm wearing a plastic helmet. And then this happened. The guy, luckily I took a screenshot because this guy's deleted it. I did show this on the Will Cain show, but his name is John La La La. And he CCs all the Ruthless podcast on this as well. So it makes me wonder what's up here. This is the post. And I think I have it here if you want to zoom in, Dan, for anybody watching on YouTube or Facebook. Will Cain. Your hair dye job is capital hands down the worst on Fox. You've surpassed Lucas Tomlinson for the worst dye job. LOL, he's not done. He's still going. LOL, Chinese black hair does not look good on a middle-aged white guy. So, okay.
You're culturally appropriating too?
That's what, yeah, that's right. Like I go into the hair dye place and they go, what would you like? I go, make me look Chinese. Like I want 20-year-old Chinese. That's what I'd like. You know, no gray, pure jet black. Can you do it for me? And they're like, we got it for you.
The bottle.
It's over here. It's called shoe polish.
Yeah.
This guy was super aggressive until I posted this and shared it on television, and then he deleted it, which John La La La, I mean, like, what's up? Like, don't run from what you have to say. Did you get some pushback? Let me start with this. Lucas, I'm sorry for the strays. I don't know why you're catching strays, Lucas Tomlinson. I don't know if Lucas dyes his hair. In fact, Lucas and I would describe us as at least friendly, if not friends. Like, we message each other, we text. I've never met Lucas in person. I don't think I've ever met Lucas in person. I don't know if he's 5'5" or 6'5". Here we go again. Will obsessed
There
with
we
height.
go.
I don't know. So I don't. By the way, my sons also say this, just like you guys in the audience. My sons say I'm obsessed with height, but I never thought that I was. I don't know if Lucas dyes his hair. No idea. But I do know this, and I'm sorry, I might sound offensive here, and it's like a fart. The smeller's the feller. This may make me look guilty. I don't dye my hair, which, for the record, John, makes your comment get in my head more. Like, how does my hair look like this if I'm not dyeing it? How do I naturally look like I have a bad dye job? Like, what is going on there? And the weird thing is, I'm getting grayer. I think I got grayer over the Christmas break. I think I lived an unhealthy lifestyle over the Christmas break. And I think it made me grayer. So I don't know why you're saying, I think I know the answer. I think it's lighting. Go ahead, Tinfoil.
I defended you on this already on the internet, but I've seen you in person. It is not dyed. There is gray there. There's gray flecks. When you see you have gray. It's there.
Right in here.
This is Lucas.
Right in here.
I don't think this doesn't look a dye job.
Well, it's at night. Lucas is Lucas 40 yet? I don't know how old Lucas is. Let's see some more Lucas pictures. Let's keep the investigation going into Lucas.
Okay.
Because you know what they say.
So
the
that's
best way
night.
to
It's coming.
get yourself off the hot seat is to deflect. So let's focus on Lucas.
It's too
Are you
dark.
sure that wasn't Lucas's burner?
It's very dark hair.
Yeah, I think that's natural.
I wonder. Look, that one right there. That's daylight. It's very dark.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But I'm not.
Handsome guy.
Maybe it's overhead TV lighting, which darkens your hair. All right, Lucas. If this gets back to you, you're under investigation. That's the best way to get me out from underneath the police light. Really quickly, I did also want to touch on Venezuela. And I basically shared with you my opinion that I do believe that what we're watching happen in Venezuela is America first. There's been some others who've given some good arguments. Glenn Beck had a very interesting monologue yesterday about how this checks the boxes of America first and what the effects are ultimately on China if they're deprived of what is really only 4% of their imports right now, Venezuelan oil. But Iran is teetering as we speak. Now, Iran has teetered on several occasions, but Iran, Russia, and Venezuela make up almost the entirety of Chinese oil. And if China doesn't have access to oil, they don't have access to invading Taiwan. They don't have access to turning the lights on in Beijing. They don't have access to the control of their population. Now, we're not trying to back China into a corner like we did Japan in World War II, to where we oil embargoed Japanese oil, or didn't allow oil to be imported into Japan, and that backed them into a corner of attacking Pearl Harbor. And I don't think that's the goal, but controlling certainly the Western Hemisphere and controlling Chinese expansion is certainly in the American interest. And I think Donald Trump is being incredibly honest. Now, I will tell you, I don't think the entire sales pitch on this thing from start was completely honest. I always was skeptical about the narco-trafficking targets, because while, yes, Venezuela is responsible for some drug trafficking, and yes, all that's true, I don't think that means it's the primary motivation for action from the United States. If that were the primary motivation, I think we'd be looking at other countries, and maybe we will, like Mexico and Colombia. But I think there were other primary motivations, one of which I just explained. The other is giving the United States control over the world's largest depository of not just oil and gas, but critical minerals, gold, all kinds of things that exist in Venezuela. And Trump is saying it. He's just saying it. He's just not wrapping it up in, yes, we're pointing out that it was a fake election in Venezuela. But he's not wrapping up in we're going to, have Venezuelans like Iraqis dipping their thumbs into blue paint and voting, about democracy. He's telling the truth bluntly about motivations that are America first. And say what you will, if you agree or disagree or this or that with whatever we've done, or you're concerned about the long-term effects, all of which are legitimate, There's something to be said about the complete honesty now with which this is being explained to the American people and how it serves Americans. Let's take one more quick break, be back, and let's talk about college football, playoff, and NFL playoff on Will Cain Country.
The world of business moves fast. Stay on top of it with the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday. Fox Business reporters, anchors, and hosts will bring you beneath the stock market speculation and boardroom drama to tell you about the biggest business stories of today. Whether you're on Main Street or Wall Street, Fox Business is invested in you.
Listen to the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Did you hear the news? Now you can. With instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa. Breaking stories and top headlines, the economy, and so much more. Brought to you by Fox News, America's #1 cable news network. Plus, setup couldn't be easier because everything's ready to go in the app. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
It's the latest when you need it, on demand from Fox News and Amazon Alexa. From around the world,
Trey Yingst, joining us from Tel Aviv, Israel.
To Washington.
I'm Mike Emanuel.
To your own backyard. If a story impacts you or your wallet, we're on it. It's the Fox News Rundown. We give every story the deeper look it deserves with must-listen interviews and smart analysis from the voices you can trust. Start your day with the Fox News Rundown. Listen and follow now at foxnewsrundown.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
We just want you in. Just join the militia, the community. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Facebook, Will Cain on both. And follow us on Spotify and Apple. Just, it's what we do. Community. Tinfoil Pat, Two-A-Days Dan here today as well. By the way, we were talking about with John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting, being appreciative of the audience. Suzanne Nico says on YouTube, I would approach Will if I saw him. If words come out of my mouth, that's another story. I'm not intimidating, Suzanne. I promise. Much to my chagrin, I wish I was more intimidating. As my sons say, wish I had more aura. Christine C9L40. I sure would talk to Will. Big fan of Will and your podcast and the Will Cain Show. Thank you so much, Christine. And Sarah Jordan says, I would definitely say hi to Will if I saw him out and about. Well, you definitely should if you see me out and about. Say hi.
Gotta stare him down, though.
I'm not going to be able to...
Take control, people.
Assert dominance.
I don't know how much I'm going to be able to watch because I am going hunting again this weekend. I'm going duck hunting. Super excited about that. So I won't be able to tune in for every playoff game. Well, let's talk about what we've got coming up. We've got both college football and NFL playoff games. College football, we're down to the last four. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Ole Miss, Oregon, Indiana. Hold on. Why is it my brain flushed? Indiana, Miami. Boom. It's on my desk. It's right there. I got the helmets, Indiana and Miami on my desk. Doesn't it strike you in tinfoil? You're the next biggest college football fan after me on this show. All this NIL, all this transfer portal, all this, man, it's parity. It's wide open. It's never been more wide open. And let me just tell you something. As a fan of a quote-unquote blue blood legacy program, earned or unearned, whatever you want to do with that, but without doubt one of the biggest budgets, the transfer portal's opened, and I'm waiting for Texas to get... The truth is, here's a little micro story for anybody that's a fan of the University of Texas, but also... Arch Manning's roommate's a guy named Parker Livingstone. Parker Livingstone's like a good old boy from Texas, wears a cowboy hat, plays wide receiver. Just a couple days ago, he always wanted to be a Longhorn his whole life. He hit the transfer portal. And everybody's like, what? Why? And he's suggesting he got pushed out, basically. He's suggesting, and he's pretty good. He's not a bust. Now, he hasn't been like, I mean, he starts. or if he doesn't start a game, he's always in a game. And he's getting half the snaps, I would say, at wide receiver. And you're like, why? Why would that guy hit the portal? And the suggestions are because they told him, look, we're recruiting over you in the portal. We're going for bigger dogs. And the gem in everybody's eye is Cam Coleman from the University of Auburn. Everybody wants him, or Auburn University. Everybody wants Cam Coleman. And so my thoughts are, well, okay, money whip him, Texas. He wants $2 million, $2.5 million. Get him. You've already made your bed. You let Parker Livingstone go. And it's looking like he may go to Oklahoma, so that's the ultimate sin. But I'm not sure Texas is going to get Coleman. Because in part, another helmet on my desk, Texas Tech, is in the running. And Texas Tech is paying big money. Big money. And my point is, and by the way, Texas is in for a running back from Arizona State, Raleek Brown. Texas was trying to get Louisville's running back, but he decided to stay at Louisville because they paid him. And this guy from Arizona State, guess where he's thinking about besides Texas? Indiana. So my point is, all of this, has it made college football better if we describe better as more people actually have an opportunity to compete for the national championship? Because that seems to be true.
Whether you like it or not, yeah.
It's been a long time for Miami. So if you look at it and you go, well, Miami, and maybe Miami's on the same, they have a bigger history than Oregon, but Oregon's sort of been an almost there school for a bit, but Indiana has never been there, Ole Miss, never been there. So I don't know if we can go so far as to call it parity, but much more wide open. And isn't that better, Pat?
I don't like it. I mean, I like the way college football was, but I definitely do agree that there's more parity. And the reason there's more parity isn't just because the NIL and the portal, which is a big part of it, but it's one of the things that no one thinks about, and that's the fact that we have the running clock. And the running clock rule that was just changed in the last few years, it creates fewer opportunities and during the game for offenses. And that allows for these teams, because the parity is spread out on talent, it allows for those smaller talented teams, lesser talented teams, to essentially knock off the bigger dogs, the guys who have more depth. So something to think about.
Well, hold on. It hasn't done anything for the likes. So you're talking about increasing higher variability for upset because over a longer arc, the better talent wins. That's why the NBA is less unpredictable. Because 82 games, same with baseball, you're going to get the averages play out. So you're saying fewer series in a game because of the clock means that the better team with the better talent over a longer period of time has a higher probability of winning. You shorten it, you get higher variability. But I would say, Pat, that means we would also see more James Madison winning in the first round of the playoff or Tulane winning. And we're not seeing that yet. What we're seeing is other Power 4 conference teams,
right,
like Indiana, leap up into the ability to smoke Alabama.
Yeah, JMU is still not there talent-wise. The gap's still too big. But, as far as, Indiana's, the talent isn't that much different. And, most teams across college football all have guys at different positions. The problem is depth. And so teams like Texas and Alabama, the reason they were able to win more is because they had more depth. So, as you progress into the season, you're able to plug those holes in where other teams aren't able to, their star running back goes out. So, that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I mean, I'm a traditionalist too. So you're just reflexively liking the way things were. Also, certainly my program was a beneficiary of that. Yours, to some extent, was Florida State. Now we live in a world where, Indiana and Ole Miss are beating Georgia and Alabama. And I've been waiting for you to want to do the segment on the SEC's overrated. Because I think, isn't the SEC's record in the bowl games segment 3-9? Which,
yeah.
Texas is one of the three. That Texas-Michigan game was awesome, by the way. But, yeah, SEC has not had a good run of it in bowl games. Meanwhile, over in the NFL, Dan, run through them real quickly for me, the games. Here's what we've got. First round of the NFL playoffs. So you got you know what? I'm going to do these in order of interest, totally subjective, okay? Least interesting game, Rams, Panthers. Just because I expect the Rams to run over the Panthers at 8 and 9. So not that interested in that game. Second least interesting game to me, San Francisco, Philadelphia. Not because that won't be a good game and those are good teams, but fatigue for me. There's a balance between, do you want somebody new? Do you want the same programs? Those two programs have been in there for a while, so a little bit of fatigue. So lack of curiosity there. And I'd say third, Green Bay, Chicago, because it's going to be the third time we've seen this game this year, right? So the whole NFC slate are the least interesting games to me. I will be interested to see if Chicago, if they lose to Green Bay, it's going to be one of those stories of like, oh, man, you dominate the regular season and not cut out for the playoffs. But the most interesting games for me on the other side, it is the AFC. Put that back up again, 2-a-days. It is, let's do this in order. I would say in order of interest for me, it's going to go number 3, Houston, Pittsburgh. And the intrigue there is Aaron Rodgers and Houston, because Houston's actually hot and good right now. And then second most interesting game to me will be Chargers-Patriots. A little bit like the Chicago story, is New England ready to be a playoff team? Is Drake May ready to be a playoff quarterback? And I have a soft spot, and I can't explain why, but I just have a soft spot for the Chargers a little bit. Even though, did you guys see that time? This made me so mad at the Chargers. Did y'all see the story where when they played the Cowboys, the Chargers social media posted a story that made it look like Cowboys center Cooper Beebe used the N-word or used a racial slur? Did y'all not see this?
No.
Oh, so a defensive tackle for the Chargers is jawing with the Cowboys center, and it's beeped out. You don't. Like, it's a bad word. So and the Chargers player's like, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? And you can never and then BB says something, and I said da-da-da, and he's like, you said what? But every time BB says what he said, they beep it out, so you don't know what he said, right? And Chargers media posted it, social media, and implied that he was using a racial slur against the Chargers player. He was making a line call. He not only never used the N-word,
it
doesn't appear that he was even talking trash to the
You guys
Chargers
need to
player.
update your line
calls.
calls.
He was making line calls.
If you're using that kind of language on your line calls.
Yeah, those are outdated line calls, man. Can't really say that these days.
1930s line calls. But it was dirty trick from the Chargers. But I still have a little bit of a soft spot for the Chargers. I would love that's like a team from Marty Schottenheimer and Phillip Rivers to even Drew Brees before that. They were always like a good team that could never get past the Patriots and the Colts at that time. And then it feels like the same with Herbert. Like, they're good, but what do we all think? They're going to lose in the first or second round of the playoffs, right?
Yes.
So I would love to see the Chargers and Herbert get over that.
So
but the most interesting game is yours, Tinfoil. I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Most interesting game, Jaguars-Bills. 13-4 Jags. 12-5 Bills. Because honestly, I don't know what's going to happen in that game. The Jags seem to be legitimately pretty good.
By the Bills.
No, far from it. The Bills do not match up in this game. This is going to be a very uninteresting game.
They're pretty dangerous, man.
You think it's going to be a blowout? The Jags favored by 3. Is that what it is? Or 3.5?
No, we're the underdog.
Like
we're the dog. We're a 1.5 dog at home.
Yeah. You're not worried about Josh Allen being Superman?
Well, I've had him on my fantasy team this year, and no, I'm not concerned, to be honest. He got married, and he just kind of dropped off a cliff.
Wow.
Not the same guy.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
So he's happy now that he plays crappy.
Listen, in order to be good at something, you have to have a little unhappiness in you. And, he's like...
Best music comes from unhappy people.
Exactly. Like, whenever an artist is, in a good, solid relationship, they never make a good song.
Taylor Swift.
And then they break up with the person. Yeah. And then they, hits galore. That's how it has to be. And then, the same with quarterback. When did Tom Brady win that Super Bowl?
Really?
What?
You think it's the same with athletes?
We should go back. We should go back and look at the breakups and marriages.
What about
of
TV?
certain athletes.
What about TV hosts? Do TV hosts need to be a little unhappy?
Will's been happy for a long time.
Yeah, you're being a little too happy right now. Things are coasting a little too well.
I am a little too happy.
Yeah, you need to break it down a little bit.
You got to be miserable like me, and you just got to be naturally.
Are you guys, before we go, more excited about the NFL playoffs or the semifinals of the college football playoff? Which one?
NFL. My team's still in it.
Hands down.
Oh, with no team in either, I can tell you I'm much more excited and interested in college football playoff. I would rather watch Indiana, Miami than all of those NFL games. And I would rather watch Ole Miss, Oregon than all of those NFL games. Count me in on that. When I'm not shooting mallards, that's going to do it for us today. Same time, same place. See you again next time.